Right. Well, thank you guys for hanging in. We're on the home stretch, so we'll try and make this as easy as possible. Thank you also to Brand Innovators and Qualcomm for such a great day. I'm really excited to be here with these two wonderful women. So we'll get started. Just by way of introductions, my name is Shabnam Irilian. I am Managing Director at Billups. Billups is an out-of-home specialist agency. We support our brand and agency partners with strategy and campaign development, specifically in the out-of-home space and experiential space. And for us, that's really important, and coupled with all of the work we do to infuse data into planning from an insight perspective on the front end, and then how we come to use our proprietary tech and patented technologies from an attribution and measurement perspective. So Carrie and Carrie, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves, where you're at, what you guys do day to day.
So I'll go first. So I'm Carrie Craig. I am the Senior Director of Application Delivery at Bose. So I'm on the IT side. So all of you marketers, I partner with you. I am your partner on the IT side. I have 3 lines of business mainly that I'm responsible for: sales and marketing, supply chain, and manufacturing. And those of you that don't know Bose, our products, there's 2 major lines of business: home goods. I think you'll know because we have headsets, sound bars, things like that. That's home goods. And then we have automotive. So you might not know, but we sell upgraded sound systems to 6, maybe 7 now, major car companies. We manufacture that across the border in Tijuana. We ship it to Otay Mesa, and most of them pick up from Otay Mesa. So our 2 major lines of business are home goods and automotive. They are equally as important, and I own the application systems for both of those lines of business. I will also say, you're like, oh, well, I didn't even know Bose played in San Diego. So Bose is a Boston, Massachusetts-based company. We were founded by Dr. Bose, who was an MIT grad. He also was an MIT professor, and he got on an airplane one day and he's like, wow, these headphones are really bad. And he's like, how do I make them better? And noise cancels noise. So we see ourselves as a software company. Like, people don't know that. But noise cancels noise. I will tell you, I had a son who had a hearing deficiency, and Bose actually created the first off-the-shelf hearing aids, which you could buy at Costco today. We realized we do not know how to make a medical device go to market. That's not our specialty. So we sold the hardware of that, and we power those hearing aids. So you could buy those at Costco. They're branded, powered by Bose. We sell the software to those hearing aids. And so, yeah, I definitely think I work for one of the best companies in the US. I just happen to be one of the few employees that are West Coast based.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carrie Olson. I work at Dexcom. I'm on the product marketing team, so really overseeing and orchestrating the 360-degree marketing planning and strategy for one of the product brands that Dexcom carries. If you're not familiar with Dexcom, it's a medical device manufacturer here, located here in San Diego. It's actually pretty much right down the road. And the product brand that I'm on, it's a brand that's actually launching this summer. It's called Stello, and it will be the first glucose biosensor available without a prescription. So definitely capturing that new category, and really excited about it. It's an exciting time at Dexcom.
That's amazing. So our panel today, we're talking about, putting together crafting campaigns around capturing emerging markets and what that looks like. So Carrie, I'd like to start with you, and just, talk to us, especially, after the day we've had today, talking about how really technology is driving so much of what we're doing, the role of AI, but really thinking about how much data is available these days. It's nothing like when most of the people in this room started out their careers. It's kind of actually the complete opposite. So what does that look like? How does this take shape now, particularly as it pertains to how you're looking at entering emerging markets with your campaign development?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think as marketers, we live on that balance of art and science on a day-to-day basis. So, of course, the more data, the better. As a marketer, it sharpens our ability to reach customers at the right place with the right message at the right time. We've heard that a few times today. So data really is paramount. I will acknowledge that different brands prioritize data differently, and especially internal resources. So, if you don't have the resources invested internally, there, one of the benefits of AI coming more emerging is that there is more data accessible to us to work from, or analysis or modeling that we can use to inform our decisions. Additionally, for me personally, I like to look at challenger brands, so what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how they're making it work. One analogy that I'll share that I think is very pertinent to marketing within an emerging market. So bear with me here. I used to live at a time in my life on the East Coast, I'm a snowboarder, so relatively close to a ski resort. Especially as you live close to a ski resort, you can be kind of selective in, the conditions that you want to ride in or the type of gear that you want to bring. Especially if people are skiers or familiar with mountainous regions, typically with elevation, microclimates exist within a mountain. So what you're experiencing 20 miles outside of a mountain, it could be different when you're actually feet on the ground. So during that time, I had a really great group of friends. We would coordinate, our trips so that we could get to the mountain together. And, we would have a thread going to say, what conditions are on the mountain today. So we would look at the mountain resort, we would look at socials, we would look at the lot information to see, how many people were at the resort, what the lift status was, just to kind of get a gauge of, what board should I bring? Should I bring, better layers? So just really kind of understanding what equipment and what gear I need to take. So at one point, we have gone through this exercise a few times. At one point, one of my friends, kind of responded, and they were just like, "It's hard knowing, not knowing." And I think that is the key takeaway, especially when you're marketing to an emerging market. You don't know until you're actually in market how people are going to respond, especially if you're creating a new category, if you're introducing a new product. Specifically at Dexcom right now, we are, essentially creating a new category. So, you can make, you can use all the data that you can to make decisions and use your intuition as much as possible. But until you actually launch and are live, you really don't know how customers are going to uptake and respond to that. So I think that is the key takeaway, and like the unlock to that is using, setting clear goals and then being agile when you do hit market. So what's working? Great, amplify and iterate. If there's something that's not working, can you test it? What's not, can you dig into that a little bit more to understand how you can optimize and iterate so that it is performing a little bit better?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And I would definitely add partner. So partner with your IT folks. So just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you use AWS, if you have in your IT portfolio AWS, Salesforce, Microsoft, or Google.
Nice.
Every single one of those big four that I mentioned have been doing AI for multiple years. And what you could ask on your marketer's behalf from an IT perspective is, let me pull my marketer in and say, hey, AWS, Microsoft, Salesforce, or Google, you're our partner. What other customers do you have that are entering this emerging market? What have they seen? You don't need to disclose anything. You need to say, I'd love to talk to someone who has entered this market. What have they seen? What were their learning moments? What did they do differently? And they probably would love to talk to you. And that connection, that vendor would probably love to make for those marketers from an IT perspective. It guarantees them sales future state.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. A question for you, Carrie, around that data and the way that data is sort of gained from the consumer audience that you're looking to target. I know at Billups, a lot of what we're doing is trying to stay at the forefront of what global privacy laws look like over the next year or two, and how we're adapting sort of now for what attribution means and looks like from our perspective. For you, as you're looking at your campaign dev, what does that mean for you? Is that something that's impacting how you look at things now, or is that still a little ways off for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Short answer, absolutely. I think, and it's come up within the themes of today. AI, it's not new. As marketers, we've been using, analytics and algorithms for many, many years. I think the thing that has shifted and accelerated AI in the space is the consumer consciousness around the technology and the adoption, and that's really expediting the category as a whole. In tools, they're getting really sharp, really sophisticated, and that ends up netting in more exposure to customers, and that's where this legislation is coming into place. So, I mean, even a lot of our partners right now, we're looking down the line and saying, okay, what first party data, what targeting can we do at this point in time? How does that evolve, and how can we adhere to these regulations as they roll out on a global scale? And having worked at global companies, the legislation, while this is a global initiative, the legislation is different across all different locales and regions. So I'd say, it's really important to be educated in the specific locales and partner with your legal.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the theme of today. Partner with legal.
Yes.
And I'd say, the same, and we're experiencing very much the same, that it's really a case by case sort of situation, depending on which market you're in. So really the data partners you have in those respective locations alongside your own first party data is so critical to have that first look at.
Absolutely.
Carrie, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this translates as we come into your world, because obviously we've got sort of marketing side, IT tech side. So we're talking about the data, the AI, and the plethora of decisions that this data is informing. Walk us through what that looks like for you when you sort of are partnering with your sales and marketing.
Yeah, I would definitely say too, don't just partner with legal, definitely partner with your CISO. So if you go to legal, they're not going to ask, did you already talk to your CISO? That's the first question they're going to ask is, did you talk to the CISO? Because quite frankly, that's their area of expertise. And at the end of the day, we all just need to make sure we're all secure. So AI is driven by inputs of human behavior and data. So I think you've heard a plethora of times today is your data kind of needs to be clean. It needs to be in a central location. You need to use application sets that mirror each other to understand the data. At the end of the day, someone still has to determine the data and they still have to read it. So guys, I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old, and here's the advice I'd give them is you will have a job come when it's time for you to graduate from college. Your job just might be different than what I tell you today as a technologist that it looks like. So AI is never, ever, ever going to replace anyone's job. It has to be trained. It has to be, it'd be like a pet. At the end of the day, you don't just let a pet run free reign in your home. You love them, but you're like, we have to have some boundaries. You have to do the same thing with AI, and you have to invest in that, and people need to invest in it. And it's the people that are champions of the AI, who understand the AI, who want to actually do it, but do it in a safe manner with my data. Because you go to ChatGPT, and by the way, you could also go to Microsoft's
Copilot.
You could go to Copilot, you could go to Salesforce Copilot, you can go to all of those. You do that today, you still have to train it. It's still understanding you as the handler. So that's the thing I want to tell everyone is don't be afraid of it. It's not your enemy, it's your friend, but you have to tell it how much you want it to do for you and how much you want to throttle back on it. And I'll be honest, guys, that's happened for the last 20 years in technology. If you are a marketer by trade and you realize and you understand what IT has helped you do from that perspective, you've been doing it for 20 years, so you know it.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of it.
Exactly. And then, we were chatting earlier and you were sharing about how, over the various roles you've held in your career, you've used several of these different kinds of applications and how that sort of influenced how you look at things now. At what stage are you partnering with your sales and marketing team to bring in sort of what you're deriving from all of that?
Yeah, so thanks for reminding me. So the good thing from a technology perspective too is the cloud. My friend, right? The cloud was 10 years ago, we all started talking about you need to go to the cloud. You need so that moved a lot of us technology people to SaaS solutions, so software as a service. And that's where I say, do you use Amazon? Do you use Microsoft? Do you use Google? Do you use Salesforce? That's all software as a service, right? So those technology spaces have been doing this for a while. We know as technologists, if we have to service our customers, we don't want to have hardware stacked up in some data center. That's not that's technology of the past. technology of the future is to say, how do we deliver to you, marketers and sales, like quickly, faster, based on the number of data inputs you want? I can't have a whole bunch of servers stocked up in a, like a system, our system center. Like that's not technology of the future. So I will tell you guys, like if you look at emerging markets, I will say too, like Salesforce too, and I saw some of your backpacks, so I know you're all like technology people too. Salesforce, right, is like, it's all about personalization. So I can not only, this is emerging markets and how do you do email campaigns, I can not only send you an email campaign, it's not a blast email campaign to everyone in this room, it's a blast email campaign to the 200 people sitting in this room, personalized to each of you because I used an AI input. Now, how much could I actually oversee all of that? I mean, that becomes a little bit pragmatic, and you have to judge that based on your customer base. But if I'm trying to sell you a pair of headphones, does it matter if I got a tad bit like incorrect? You could also just use social media. You use Facebook, you use Instagram, you use TikTok. And if you see on your feed something that's not irrelevant to you, you should say it's irrelevant, because you're training your own AI bot to push to you what you think is relevant and what's not. Like, so it's out there. I would also tell you, I would say for us old folks, like me being included, the 50s, who are like, oh, okay, like we're a little bit scared, or like, ask your kids. If you think they're not influenced by it, you will quickly be schooled. So if you start asking your kids, well, why do you think that? How do you think that? Oh, I saw this TikToker, and like, can I see the TikToker? Like, there's a ton of different inputs. And what I'd tell you is I feel like AI is a relevant option where we get it maybe 90% correct. And if we as humans can get the rest of the 10%, why wouldn't we use it?
Yeah.
So
that's a great point. And you just talking about like everybody talk to your kids, like my oldest one is 6. I'm borderline terrified to ask her these questions one day. I'm just so grateful we're not in that stage yet, because to your point, like it's a really important conversation to be having, and it's kind of terrifying when you think about the results of what that's doing.
Well,
so how being able to sort of lead in with that, like you're saying,
Yeah.
and make sure it's on the correct trajectory is important. But to your point, you mentioned the future of what all this looks like. Do you have any predictions in particular around?
Well,
what this
I
looks
will
like?
say too, like, so mine are 12 and 14, and they also, I'm blessed to say they go to schools where the 14-year-old has a phone, but the 12-year-old does not. I wouldn't say that's probably the case for a lot of people, but listen, I've also had my 12-year-old say, I think I want to take a coding class. So that's kind of interesting, right? Is like, I want to take a coding class, but I'm not willing to give you a phone yet. Like, so someone who's in the technology space too is like, these are things that we didn't deal with as kids, and we have to figure out how to deal with them logically as parents. And then we have to understand that hopefully we have kids that understand you are blessed, or you are like, this is a privilege, and you can't go out beyond certain parental constraints that I have within the phone, which is also powered by AI, guys. Your parental constraints are powered by AI. So kind of super fun things I would just tell you is like, even if you're like, oh, I'm kind of scared of it, you're using it today, whether you know it or not.
Thank you for that. And then Carly, I just wanted to kind of bring that a little bit back around to you and ask you a little bit, like, what does AI and tech look like in your role from a campaign development perspective as you guys are putting together your marketing strategies? How is AI informing that or supporting that from a tech perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's such an evolving technology. I think if anyone follows industry newsletters like Adweek or Smart Brief, like your inboxes are littered with AI subject lines like mine. So, from a Dexcom side and from a product side, we have part of our product solution is software. So, for many years we've had algorithms that share the user's data back with them in segmented ways. And I can only foresee that continuing to evolve and get more sophisticated. And, as we were talking about, personalized and catered to the customer. From a marketing side, a couple of the key things that I really see optimizing with AI is, customer service, reducing the cost to serve based up, using bots and, less manual work. The second is market research. I see, really creating a lot of efficiency within the space. So receiving top lines at a more quick speed, and more rapidly. I think, when we were testing a market research partner that they use AI as part of the research. So it's a smaller test group. So that means quicker results, usually at a less cost because the AI actually extends the algorithm. And then I'd say the third area that I really see it coming into prominent is copy and messaging. In some of the examples that we shared today, I do have an example of copy and messaging recently. So we were working and testing some iterations around AI, using AI tools within iterative messaging, and really playing around with brand tonality and essence that can come through. Just making sure that the brand is represented accordingly. In one of the territories we were exploring a little bit more bolder tonality. And one of the examples that came out, it was like straight out of Lord of the Rings. It was talking about grand journeys and gremlins and peaks and pits. And so as a brand marketer, I saw it and I just laughed because it's so off-brand. We would never use it, but I think it underscores the quality of the inputs and the safeguards you have in place to make sure that whatever is releasing out into the public is represented from the brand from an according standpoint.
Yeah, that's great. And then, similarly to that, when you're measuring success after you've entered these markets, how are you looking at how you're measuring success, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, measurement, it's really, you look on a channel by channel basis. So fundamentally, from the resources that we have, we look at predominantly engagement and conversion metrics. Of course, if you're looking at a specific channel, the metrics will adapt. But I think, I'm a huge advocate for testing and learning. So even if you're seeing metrics that aren't performing to what you expected, test and learn, run A/B tests within the marketplace. But it's really channel specific and, according to the goals that you set.
Yeah, of course. So we're coming up on time. Hopefully this has gone fairly quickly for everybody. But just before we sort of open up to some questions that may or may not be incentivized, just want to see, for both of you, if there's any key takeaways that you want to leave sort of our lovely audience with before we wrap up.
Well, I would just say, I have worked at Nuvasive. I did do emerging markets, so I did international application sales, right? So we were all, from a KPI perspective, we were always judging how well is our product performing, how many surgeries are we doing, why are we doing them? I will say though, is again, you'll have tool sets that help you to localize to the environment you're in. So I'm not in the UK. I don't know what what they might be looking for from that perspective. I can help to judge that, but then I can use, as she says, test and learn. I can use that to judge the rest of my EMEA region, right? The same with on the Asia Pac side. I'm not in Australia, but I have a whole Asia Pac region. I can use that to help judge if I'm going to emerge in a new market, what that means from that Asia Pac region. So I would just say, there are tool sets already out there. Again, I would encourage you as marketers to partner with your IT teams, your vendors, to say, what are other customers doing in these regions and why are they doing it that way? And I just struggle with, there's tons of vendors here that are happy to introduce you to other customers that they have. So
thank you. Carly?
Yeah, I think, I think some of the key takeaways for me is, of course, we have these resources at our disposal to make us more efficient and sharper in our practices, right? I mean, that's fundamentally what this technology brings. I think, as we've heard through most of the panels, the underscore is the people behind the tools and the people who are really building and managing campaigns or marketing practices. And I'd say specific to emerging markets, I think, there are some key themes, especially around the teams that are built, being able to function in ambiguity and really being comfortable operating in that gray space. And that is also translate back to, the usage of these new tools. You have to have an open mind and and be willing to adopt this, because as we've heard, like your job isn't going away, but it might go away by someone who knows how to use the tools better than you. Additionally, thinking outside the box and challenging the status quo, like there is no greater enemy to the progression of business than a good enough mentality. So I'd say that's, being able to question things and really dig into them a little bit really goes a long way within, the marketing and campaign building within emerging markets. And then the last is just being able to really like think outside the boundaries that have been created and think outside the box. I think those are fundamentals to the team behind the technology.
Can I add to like,
Please.
like be okay or be willing to actually fail on something.
Yeah.
Like, so this is super hard. I'm probably like, for my sales and marketing folks out there, is like your whole job is like to meet quota. Like as long as you get to the quota. But what if you didn't set the quota high enough? Right? And so like people are like, they always have to justify when they don't meet the quota. So then I hear my CMO ask all the time, are you sandbagging? Are you like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, the poor, like I have service, I have e-com, I have marketing. And I'm like, yeah, like, of course they are. Like, they don't want to fail. Like nobody wants to fail, but you also have to be in a safe space where you kind of set that precedence, is like, give 2 targets, guys. Here's the targets. Here's the low target. Like we do it in IT all the time. Here's the low target. Here's the high target. I'm going to come somewhere in the middle. See what they say.
Yeah, what you do. If you do fail, what do you do from there?
Yeah.
That's what really makes the difference.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for your time today. I just want to open it up if there's any questions from the group before we wrap up.
Look, the first question, and
We're tracking.
first person that gets a prize that they get to pick from.
I promise it wasn't just for the prize. My question to both of you, since you're both with big companies, at the CIO, CTO levels in their office, are they starting initiatives or committees, let's say task forces, to explore how to involve AI, how to leverage AI in product development?
Yeah.
So just curious what's happening at the big companies.
So like anything, guys, things have to be governed, right? Like, and so I do think they look at the technology side to govern AI. So yes, so I would tell you at my corporation, like particularly, it's the senior director of intelligence. So mainly your reporting section and the CISO together are working on what is the governance for AI, who can and cannot use it, and which myself on the delivery side and my peer on the infrastructure and EA side kind of have to adhere to that.
Sorry, you mentioned senior director of intelligence or artificial intelligence? Or BI?
Mainly BI.
BI, okay.
Reporting intelligence.
Okay,
Yeah.
Got it.
Thank you. There's one more over here.
No, wait, before you go, like, I feel like you should.
So we'll remember him and then
Okay.
I'll track everything.
So you're talking about emerging markets, and we just heard from the Padres talk about how they got into Mexico City. I'd love to hear some more stories about how you're both global brand managers. How do you manage the time zone differences and things like that? Like, do you send text messages at, do you segment by the zone they live in and things like that? And what other language challenges might you have too?
Yeah, I can take this
Go
one
ahead.
first. Yeah, I mean, it's challenging working within a global organization. I'd say, sometimes as a best practice for me working with regional teams, I try to set up a recurring meeting that works across the time zones. And usually it's not all of the regions, it's usually on a 1-to-1. So, sometimes I am taking calls at 10 p.m. at night when it is conducive to their business hours. And sometimes they're taking calls, so I think especially when those are important questions to ask, especially as you're coming into a company to understand the work-life balance. There are cases that, sometimes we are, having to handle fire drills or things that are on, kind of outside of those normalized business practices. So I'd say it is always a challenge, but, I try to standardize it so we know what to expect and we at least have an open line of communication. And then languages are always so tricky. Within marketing collateral, if you're releasing global assets, and even for Dexcom, one of the G6, which is a G series product, that the sensor was actually recommended that it was worn on the abdomen. We assort in Saudi Arabia, and there is sensitivity around what you can, like body parts shown. So even outside of copywriting, really just being very cognizant of locale norms and having copy that is easily translatable so that you can iterate to the region and make it a little bit more seamless is key.
And I would say from an IT perspective, like this isn't new to me. Like your IT orgs have been practicing a follow the sun model for some time. So it actually, like I have a team in Lisbon, I'm West Coast based, my corporation is East Coast based. I have partners in Accenture, I have partners in Salesforce, I have partners in TCS that basically help me to follow the sun around I get the only one that gets pretty tricky, like probably not news to any of you, is China, because they have certain data laws that require IT orgs to store their data in their country and not move it across boundaries. So.
Yeah, and I'd say even on the agency side, I mean, it's not really a moderator to answer, but even on the agency side, we have teams that do sort of from a global account management perspective. I think Slack is life. And we know that, some of our clients and brand marketers are based in, for example, on the West Coast of the US. Some might be in Zurich or in the Netherlands or in the UK, and some might be based in, Shanghai or Tokyo. So how we're all banding together to communicate, and it's a lot of like data sharing, knowledge sharing to help facilitate that. But I think, to both your points, it's not necessarily easy, but, I will say it is fun.
Yeah, and technology has helped with that, right? We have tools that you can send to teams, and they might get to it when when they are in their operating hours. So I think tools have
communication is the biggest piece.
And global teams didn't have a problem during COVID because that was pretty much already like existing. Now, what is actually probably a little bit problematic is companies that are forcing their people back into the office for teams that traditionally were global teams and have always been remote. Like that becomes a little bit problematic at the moment. But
I think I saw a hand.
Hi.
Oh, you have the mic already. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, thanks for being here and for this panel. My name's Avni. I work at Cricket. And I just have a question around, one of the challenges you'd mentioned, which I can totally relate to, is this kind of age-old challenge of as you're trying to scale to emerging markets, right? Like the challenge a lot of those kind of in-country offices or teams might feel is limited resources, right? Like share what you have going on at corporate or headquarters. And I believe that AI and technology, actually a lot of what you were talking about really helps facilitate that more quickly. But I think the other side of the coin and the fear that we have, especially as a company that's trying to build a brand, is diluting that brand, right? You're trying to make something work for all markets. Does that resonate? I guess I'm just curious to hear your experiences, if you have them, on maybe how you've been able to facilitate building brands in emerging markets.
So I have had the privilege of kind of working on both sides, on global teams and on technically regional teams. There's been a few different ways that I've found successful. So in one instance, when I was on the regional team, we worked very closely with the global team. So if there was a larger scale campaign, we would make sure that our needs were met, and that it accommodated the various regions that they were expecting us to use assets in. Because there were times where if it was an Asian-based headquarters, they would use very like Anglo type talent, which it does not diversified. It doesn't resonate here. So that is one instance, and then also having regional teams within the markets that have budget that they can create and partner with us from a global scale to make sure that it's aligned and that it works from a brand perspective. But I think there's multiple ways to go about it. I think the biggest underscore that I can say from my various experiences is just the collaboration between the regional and the global teams, just to make sure that there's alignment and very clear understanding of what's being created and how it will be created, and the brand essence within the assets.
Awesome, thank you. And I think there was one more. Mike's coming, and two more. Sorry, two more, and I think we'll call it a day.
Piggybacking on the last two questions. So when you're localizing campaigns and you talked about the global team and the regional teams, are you mostly pushing content and creative from the global teams and then localizing, or is some of the creative also being done at the regional level? And if so, like,
Yeah.
I guess if you're doing the global, then pushing down, are you testing and then, making sure that you're...
Yeah. So I would say that is the formula that I have found the best, is kind of collaborating on the heavier investment of the global asset being produced. So, even if it's bringing in different talent, so it resonates with different markets, obviously if there is that big of an investment going into kind of a hero campaign, you can iterate, and, it's less money to create those nuances that resonate with different markets than to have each, separate campaign within market, and also just is more comprehensive. It avoids segmentation and fragmentation within the markets. It's primarily from my experience, and what I have seen success with is that there is autonomy within the regional markets to create localized assets. So there was at one point that within my career that I worked for a lifestyle/sporting brand, and they had regional athletes that were very well known that might not have been known in the U.S., but in New Zealand they were very well known. So just really having the power to create assets that resonate well within those markets and actually make an impact, rather than more high-level assets using athletes that might not resonate as much. We definitely saw a lot of impact with that. And even outside of the example of athletes, there are so many different examples that you could see the nuances between markets and how we can create assets that serve specifically and effectively.
And then just last one right over here, this gentleman in the red. Yeah.
Bill with Qualcomm Marketing Technology. Thank you so much for your time. My question is, drawing from your experiences, how do you move key stakeholders and leadership that seem like they're late adopters of marketing technology tools to be champions of your where you're going in terms of your roadmap, and be basically champions for what you're trying to implement?
So I would say leaders come with data. Come with data, come with a business case, come with what would be a revenue generating pitch. Easy for leaders. Organizational change management, like stakeholders, you have stakeholders at all levels, and I think you have to understand what those levels are, and each level is different, and what makes them an early adopter or a late adopter, or how you can prove to them, is different from all cases. So I don't know if I can speak so much to those, and I think it's different in each org, if that makes sense. But yeah, that'd be my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I'd say from a marketing tools perspective, especially if you can provide the business case of how it's creating efficiencies, how it's saving dollars or adding to the bottom line. I mean, I think that's a huge portion of it. Obviously there are key contributors. I think with the question around, especially with emerging technologies that are brought on, there are panels and committees that make sure that the technology is sound and can be adopted from an org. And as Carrie mentioned, outside of leadership, change is hard, especially with new technologies. And so I think really conveying the value that different technologies bring, like CDPs are such a big thing nowadays. The efficiencies that they bring in as a marketer, yeah, there might be a learning curve. Yeah, there might be bottlenecks at the beginning of getting data sources and APIs all set. But in the long run, once we're functioning smoothly, it makes your job tenfold easier, and it makes you and your brand more effective.
Yeah, it's like, what's there with them?
Yeah.
What's in it for them?
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you for the
Thank you
great
so
questions.
much.
Yeah.
We're done. Last
All done.
session of the day.
Thank you for your time, talent, and treasure.
Are you gonna?